Jeff Bezos owns some of the craziest things I've ever seen, like the world's biggest clock and extremely rare secrets from the bottom of the ocean. These are stupidly expensive things Jeff Bezos owns, and first up, Jeff bought a dog that can literally do his laundry. This robot dog, named Spot, can do a lot more than just this. When Jeff needs a beer, all he needs to do is put his cup down and let Spot take a piss. But in case that grosses you out, Spot can just go to the store and grab some snacks instead. And after Jeff's done eating, it'll clean up after him. Hell, it could even be his bodyguard. Even though this dog cost Bezos $75,000, it still ain't perfect. So if Bezos is trying to keep himself protected, he can't just rely on his dog, because there are powerful people out there trying to murder him. That's why he has the most expensive private security in the world. When a journalist was killed in Saudi Arabia, Bezos blamed the assassination on a Saudi prince, and their government didn't take that lightly, allegedly threatening Bezos and hacking his phone to blackmail him about his secret affair. So not only did Bezos install military-grade bulletproof glass into his office, he hired 9 bodyguards to follow him around everywhere. And that ain't cheap, coming up to $1.6 million a year, just to keep Amazon's golden boy safe. But that's still not as much as the millions he spent recovering a lost relic from the depths of the ocean. And no, it's not another submarine. It's actually something that fell out of the sky. If you didn't know, Bezos is a huge space fan. When he was a kid, he was inspired by the Apollo missions to the moon. So, he was willing to pay anything to get his hands on a piece of that history. It turns out, in the deepest parts of the Pacific Ocean, there are pieces of the rocket engine that put America in space. So, Bezos hired a crew to dig out the remains, and it cost millions to restore. Just one of these engines costs around $15 million, but we'll never know how much Jeff spent on his little expedition, because he wanted to keep it a secret. And he's not even keeping the engine for himself. He actually donated it to a museum for the world to see. Maybe Bezos isn't such an evil guy. Okay, never mind. But when you're worth $169 billion, you've got to buy something nice for yourself, like a stupidly expensive car collection. And you already know he's got your standard rich guy cars like a stretch limo, Escalade, and Range Rover. But when he earned his first $10 billion back in the year 2000, he bought something you'd never believe. He bought a 1997 Honda Accord. No, for real. Dude was literally worth billions and decided to drop $10,000 on a Honda. But that broke boy mentality didn't last long, because he leveled up and bought a $3 million Ferrari Pininfarina Sergio. There were only 6 of these made in the world, but it's still the cheapest supercar he owns because he also bought one of 7W Motors' Lykan Hypersport, and it's the only car in the world that has doors like this. But every billionaire needs this next car because it's a classic flex. And if you asked him, what color is your Ford, guy? Bezos would say Oreo, because he bought a black and white Bugatti Veyron, and it's by far the fastest car in his collection, reaching 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. So it makes sense why he sold it for $3.5 million. But he spent even more than that on a diamond-studded car. Jeff's Koenigsegg CCXR Trevita is covered in 1 million small white diamonds, held together with a carbon fiber weave. Being one of 3, it set Bezos back 4.8 mil. But his last and most expensive car is a Lamborghini Veneno Roadster. This special edition Lambo was made for the 50th anniversary of the company, so it cost him $10 million, making his total collection around 20 mil. Obviously, a billionaire is going to have a bunch of supercars. But Bezos ain't your average billionaire, because I bet you didn't know men spent $42 million on a clock. This thing is 500 feet tall, so imagine a clock literally bigger than the Pyramid of Giza, built into a Texas mountainside. And since Bezos is focused on the future, instead of showing seconds and minutes, this clock shows years and centuries, so it'll take 1 chime every year and chime every 100 years. There are also 5 secret rooms, like in a pyramid, set to open up across a 10,000 year period. That's if we don't blow up the planet before then. But billionaires don't have to worry about that, because Jeff can just fly away in his private jet. And you already know he can't just own one jet. He needs multiple. When he first became a billionaire, he bought a Falcon 900X, but it was still too boring for him. So he gold-plated the bathrooms and threw a king-size bed in there, costing him $13 million. That was when he was only worth a couple billion. So in 2015, when he leveled up to $70 billion, he had to get rid of that peasant plane and buy a better one. He decided to go with the Gulfstream G650 ER because it's basically a flying house. It's got multiple bedrooms, bathrooms, couches, TVs, you name it, it's got it, bro. Maxed out the customizations like it's GTA, and that's why it cost him $75 million. But he wasn't happy with just one, so he bought the exact same one again, making his total private jet fleet worth $150 million. And since Jeff contributes to half the world's pollution with those, he gets a lot of hate. So he wanted to buy something that could control people's minds, and what better way to do that than to buy the news? But Bezos had his eyes on the Washington Post, the #1 news source for Washington, D.C. I mean, he wanted it so badly, he immediately agreed to the first price that owners gave him, $250 million. I'm sure you'll never see a bad article about good old Jeff in that newspaper anymore, because now he has the power to attack anyone he wants with articles. But if you think $250 million is expensive, just wait until you hear how much his mansions cost. Because obviously, he's going to have more than just a couple mansions. Dude has 7, and some of them are pretty weird, like his DC home, which actually used to be a museum before he bought it. He really wiped away all that history just for the place to be empty most of the time. So instead of old relics, it's now got a movie theater, whiskey tasting room, elevators, a ballroom, 11 bedrooms, and 25 bathrooms, costing him $36 million in total. Who even needs that many rooms? And that's just one mansion. He's got another in Miami worth $68 million. This waterfront mansion's got 7 bedrooms, 14 bathrooms, a full-on sauna, and a giant pizza oven in the wall. He loved the place so much that he wanted a second one. So he kicked out his neighbor and bought the place for $79 million. His next property, though, is worth $80 million, but it's not even a mansion. It's an apartment. He bought a 4-floor New York City penthouse. It's got your standard marble floors, a library, and a glass fireplace, but it's one of the only buildings with a perfect view of the Empire State. But his last mansion's got to be my favorite, because not only is it in Hawaii where the weather is perfect, it's also got some of the craziest views I've ever seen. First off, you got your own private beach, but to the right of that, there's a whole ass lava field from a 1000-year-old volcanic eruption. And there isn't just one mansion on this property, there's actually 3. So it makes sense why he spent $78 million. But the local Hawaiians are getting more pissed by the day because Bezos isn't the first billionaire to buy a ton of land on these small islands. And if they ever decide to invade his property, he's basically got a military base in his backyard, so I'm sure he'll be fine. You really think Jeff Bezos would care? He could buy anything he wants. I mean, he even has the record in California for the most expensive home ever bought. It's still being constructed in Beverly Hills, but just to buy the land and knock down the old house, it cost this man $165 million, making his entire portfolio of mansions at least $500 million. Is there still hidden properties no one even knows about? But that's still nothing compared to Jeff Bezos spending $4 billion on his balls. And he saved them just for his favorite employees. Jeff. Not those balls. Bezos's balls is the nickname for Jeff's special Amazon offices. And this place is basically a giant greenhouse with glass walls on the outside and over 40,000 exotic plants on the inside. I mean, the largest tree in his balls is over 50 feet tall. You can visit this private jungle too if you buy tickets, and you'll see Amazon employees working away in the jungle like it's a zoo because Jeff thinks it'll fuel their creativity. Now this brings a whole new meaning to sweatshops, and even though Bezos loves his balls, I'm sure he enjoys this yacht even more because it's one of the most expensive private boats in the world. And it's not just any yacht, it's a sailboat, meaning this thing can move without an engine, which is pretty crazy considering this boat is over 400 feet tall. Aside from being the biggest sailboat in the world, this yacht comes with some unbelievable stuff. It's got its own $10 million helicopter that surprisingly Bezos' wife can fly herself. But it's also got a jacuzzi, a nightclub, a garage for supercars, and you guessed it, a submarine. Hopefully that sub is built better than others. And to make it even more unique, the entire yacht can be manned by one person. Most yachts need a whole crew. This freak of a boat cost $25 million a year to maintain and set Bezos back $500 million to buy the damn thing. But the most expensive thing he owns is a piece of paper. Because in 2019, Jeff's wife caught him cheating with his mistress, and rightfully, she was pissed. But for some dumbass reason, Jeff was doing all of that without signing a prenup. And just like Kanye said, because when she leaves your ass, she's going to leave with half. Honestly, his ex-wife had the best investment of all time because she married him when his net worth was at its lowest and divorced him at its peak, securing her a total bag of $38 billion.